Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions concerning this watch. And this is a fascinating watch, a significant step forward for Russian watchmaker Konstantin Chaykin. It's a collaboration with Behrens, a relatively young Chinese brand that was created in 2012 and offers its own line of fascinating and offbeat timepieces. So whereas you see a lot of collaborations between retailers or blogs and websites or influencers in the watch space and watchmakers, this is actually a combination of equals, with Behrens offering both design and watchmaking input and Chaykin executing it in his much-loved Wristman series. So this is, of course, the Konstantin Chaykin by Behrens Joker Titanium with Ace of Spades inspiration, which you can see repeated as a motif on the flanks, as well as the unique stone mill style retrograding seconds hand. And you could see that it is not a snap retrograde. It's an unusual system with a eccentric wheel that allows it to act as a seconds hand, and following an eccentric path, it is neither a traditional seconds hand nor a traditional retrograde. It's something that feels very unique, a little bit like Daniel Nebel used to execute with Nordzeit machines. This is a very dynamic watch. You have to realize most of the Wristmans do not have any kind of running seconds display. So they're fun, but they're also static, and this is a bit of a breath of fresh air. So the watch is part of a 200-piece limited edition launched in grade 5 titanium for the 2022 model year. It's 42 millimeters in diameter, and as you can see from lug tip to lug tip, it is a surprisingly easy to wear 51 millimeters because the lugs are curved. It's 13.6 millimeters thick, and then we've got a 21 millimeter spacing in between the lugs. We also have a quick release system that's built into the strap, so you can use any properly sized strap with a spring bar, but take note that there is a quick release via push button that makes the watch a whole lot easier to strap swap. We'll throw the watch on my wrist, and I gotta say, it's an absolute pleasure to wear. Although it is 51 lug-to-lug, don't think of it that way. It's a timepiece whose lugs are nicely shaped and nicely curved, so even if your wrist is as small as 15 centimeters circumference, you're gonna find this wears well. The Wristman's case were not always elegant. They tended to be very cylindrical and sheer, whereas this is lower cut with a big domed and vaulted glass box style sapphire that I just absolutely love. And you could see lug to lug down the barrel. It's actually a pretty good fit for me. Here's over the top, which always tends to exaggerate the width of a watch. The strap is a lovely piece. It's very flexible. It allows the wrist to breathe. It has evacuations on the underside so that it becomes thinner and more flexible. You can see that this watch features a handsome, evacuated, open, airy buckle to match the high style of the case. And you can see even this is nicely decorated with a judicious blend of polished bevels and satination. Taking a look now at the watch proper, the timepiece has three primary finishes. It has satin, polish, and media blast. So the lug profiles, you can see they're evacuated and media blasted internally. We have Chaykin's logo on the media blasted and knurled crown. We have lugs that are stepped out from the case band, a nice touch, and an individual number plate. This is number 40 of the 200. We have polished screws. You can see how the edge of this plate has been beveled and its face has been media blasted and satinated. The bezel itself, or at least the adjacent bezel, next to the crystal, is very narrow. When you look at it from the front, the bezel is a lot less prominent than on the previous Wristman. Now, I know someone's going to wonder, is this watch luminescent? And my answer to you is, you better believe it is. Regrettably, the oar-style hand is not, but one might even argue that the watch is a little bit easier to read in the dark than it is in the light. So it's a very elaborate and unusual and original regulator-style dial. So you can see you've got separate hours, minutes, and then you've got the seconds display. And you can see the logos of Behrens and Chaykin right there. So googly eyes by night, googly eyes by day. There's a great hammered texture to the dial base. Now you can see that there's a red brushed satin frame that sits on little metallic columns held by polished screws, and that stands proud of the dial, giving it nice depth effect. There's also a engraved style of Côte de Genève, and then let's push this crown back in. The watch does feature hacking seconds, more on that in a moment. You can see that there's a crystal and that the seconds are actually printed on the crystal, and then under that you have Behrens and Konstantin Chaykin engraved along with the stripes. The center is designed, of course, to look like a nose, but it's a bridge that overhangs the system that underpins the stone mill hand, and that's what they're calling it officially. Stone mill inspired by traditional Chinese stone mill apparatus. And this part actually contributed by Behrens. So unlike a lot of retailer editions or influencer editions or blog editions, Behrens wanted to be an integral part of the design, but also the watchmaking here. So the stone mill ore style seconds hand is attributed to them. And again, we've got that ace of spades motif. Then we have the recessed wells, these dished registers, and those are responsible for the time. But you can all see how each one of them has a little sapphire bombay or curved crystal to give it a little bit of the gloss of an actual eyeball. And then the bridge flanking the seconds mechanism features a combination of satin and polished beveling with polished screws. So it's really nice. It looks great. It looks more upscale, frankly, than the previous wristmonts. And turning it all over, we have this little Behrens character back here, and he has a lot of design elements reminiscent of the watch itself. We have a frosted caseback that matches the frosted dial, so we have design parallelism. I always like to see that. And I don't know that it's strictly necessary to mention the presence of a sapphire, but there you go. You see, the Swiss don't have a monopoly on superfluous text. The Russians are perfectly capable of that. Of course, this is a Russian and Chinese collaborative effort, so you got to give credit to both Behrens and Konstantin Chaykin. Their logo's right there. I like that little character right there. And then you can see that there are different elements of card play present throughout the watch, including on the figure, the flanks, and the dial. Inside, you've got a Sellita SW200, which is Sellita's version of the ageless ETA 28242, so bidirectional automatic winding, 4 Hz beat rate. The base movement has 26 joules. It affords a 38-hour power reserve, and although that is the movement Chaykin's always used on his wristmonts because they normally don't have seconds hands, it never really mattered that there were hacking functions inherent to those Sellita movements. But because this one does have a seconds hand, you do get some utility out of the hackings function. And again, it is a very tough and reliable base movement with the Chaykin and Behrens module on the top. So there is quite a bit of manufacturer or original watchmaking here. And once again, a 38-hour power reserve. It's 50 meters water resistant, which with a push-down crown is not enough for swimming, but it's solidly more than the dress watch standard of 30. So if it gets splashed or caught out in the rain, don't worry about that. A very cool piece, and look, let's face it, I'm happy to live in a world where watches like this exist. They make watches more fun and the watch hobby a little bit more approachable. And if you'd like to approach this one, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.